Okay, today on the workbench we've got the Rotor robot, a Cragstand robot, which was produced in Hong Kong. It's mostly plastic. It's kind of a pin walker, but it actually uses cams in the bottom of the feet to waddle and move it forward, so it's actually a cam walker. Biggest problem, well actually I'll put a link down below to this video that I did of the one that I have in the Robothut, which is the same color combination. It was sold in a lot of different colors. But this one was sent to me in pieces, but it has the normal problems that the Rotors normally have, and that's in these eyes are supposed to twirl and spin when it's running, and they actually used a rubber band. The rubber band went around here, went around there, and then came up and went around this big post here. And what happens in every case, for every one of these robots I've ever seen, is through the years the rubber band goes through a couple of stages. One, as it starts to deteriorate, it turns all gummy and kind of juicy, and usually piles up on top of these plastic gears here. And then years later, that all turns totally solid. So that jams up the whole thing, so the robot can't even run anymore. This black thing you're seeing sitting here, this is a doubled up belt, like from a VCR or something like that, which I'm going to use to drive the eyes up there because it won't deteriorate. And by doubling it up, it made it the right length. I don't want to put a rubber band back in there. You just cause the same problem. In order to get the belt in there, unless you're planning on gluing the ends, whatever belt you use together, you'll have to come in through one of the sides. So normally you form a little opening on that metal, bend the metal back, and then you can get in around this cam and work your belt back up into the inside. This little cam, there's one on each side, is actually what's used to make the arm swing back and forth. And it's quite often that when you find one of these toys, those pins are going to be snapped off because someone's grabbed the arm and tried to move it, and there's nothing to keep anything from breaking when the kid does that. Let's show you the inside of the arm. So here you can see there's a slot that little pin rides in when this is all put back together. Then there's a screw and a washer that go right in here to keep the arm captive. And then to hide all of that, there's this little cap which they glue on from the factory, and you have to snap that out. And you'll have to glue that back on when you're ready to go. Like I say, you can see it's all plastic gears in there, and even the gear in the motor. Let me turn this light on here. Come on, light. There we go. And there you can see the yellow gear on the motor down in there. Quite often that gear down in there will be split, and you'll probably have to change it. Now the problem with that is, even though they have a hole there for a post that supports things, there's no hole to get to that gear. So you only have a couple of choices. One is to Dremel a hole up through the bottom up here to pop that gear out, and then you can force the new one in, or you have to try to take more of this apart. Now the problem with taking more of this apart is it wasn't designed to ever come apart again. These two big outside gears here have shafts right there, right there. They run all the way down into the feet down in here. And then here you can see those gear teeth. So there'll be a little gear on the end of that metal shaft, which then rubs on that gear. And that's what drives these concentric wheels, or cams if you will. And that's what makes the robot walk and waddle. And these freely spin on those two shafts. So my point was, if you're going to try to get this metal frame, which is just about the only piece of metal in it other than the screws, yes, you could take these screws out and these screws out and a screw here and a screw there, but you're still not going to get everything completely apart because those rods come down and go through here, and yet they're anchored up there. So you'd have to bust a lot more things apart, and even if you had to get down in here, you have to start breaking plastic and making things get ugly. This front piece will just slide back down in place in a trough when it's ready, and this one on the back slides down again. See, it's got troughed edges. This actually forms the latch that holds the door closed. When that's in there, that slides down and holds the door open. Then you lift that up and that'll allow you to get your D cells in there. Now originally the head was held on with screws, front and back. The front and the back of the head were held together with screws, like so. And then the screws went into the body. But you can see those are all busted off. Like I said, we shipped to me in pieces. So we're not going to be able to screw the head back onto this body. And I don't want to glue it on permanently with super glue, or even worse yet, a plastic glue, which would fuse it and would put the head on there forever. Just in case for someone needs to get in there for a gear or to work on that. So I'm going to probably glue it back on using the E6000 because it's a very rubber-like glue, meaning that it's not going to let loose on its own. But if a person had to, they could get up in there with the end of an X-Acto blade, you know, a pixie knife, and work the glue free and actually get the part off, and then clean that glue out and put it back together. So anytime I've got something I know I have to take apart again, I'll usually use the E6000 because it's going to hold it together. It's not going to fall apart on its own, and yet you can still force or pull or cut and get that off. Whereas a regular plastic glue on this, since this is standard plastic, if you use like plastic model glue, it's going to fuse the parts together permanently, and that's the way it's going to be. So the next video on this, with any luck, we're going to see this whole thing back together and running. But I just thought you might want to take a little peek on the inside here before I went that far, so you could see what's going on inside the Rotor robot by Cragstand in 1970s.